Barefoot and wearing a burlap sack for a shirt, he wandered the frontier with a tin pot for a hat, scattering apple seeds so that the coming settlers would have food to eat when they arrived. So your third grade teacher told you about Johnny Appleseed. And I'll bet you won't be surprised to find out that that's not the whole story. I should probably have a cider in my hand for this, but why not a stone fence? A stone fence is really nothing more than some hard cider. Oh, fizzy, fizzy foam. This, by the way, is 9-pin Imperial cider. It was the first cider I tried in a cider review I shot, and I think it was my favorite. But maybe that's just me dancing with the one who brung you. Anyway, the stone fence is nothing more than some hard apple cider, which until like Prohibition was the only apple cider in America, and a good slug of rum traditionally, although I feel like there's a tendency these days for people to want to make this into a drink that uses Applejack. That would not have been period appropriate. When I say period appropriate, this drink, the Stone Fence, goes all the way back to the Revolution. It is absolutely a drink that Johnny Appleseed and his contemporaries may or may not have enjoyed. That particular combination produces a lot of vanilla notes and a nice tart apple bite that is crazy good. I hadn't expected that to be quite that good. Vanilla and caramel right away. Tart apple bite. That is delicious. Woo! So they definitely would have enjoyed this one. There's a buttery kind of texture to the whole thing too, but that might be my mug not being clean. So let's talk about old Johnny Appleseed. John Chapin was born September 26, 1774 in the then province of Massachusetts Bay. His father, Nathaniel, was a Minuteman in the Revolutionary War, and afterwards had his son apprenticed to an apple orchardist by the name of a Mr. Crawford, according to one account. That's the most name I've got for this guy. I have looked high and low. There's nothing else in there I can find on him. It doesn't matter, because he's not really important to the story. What's important here is that this is where Johnny planted his first seed. That's terrible. I can't believe I wrote that. John was by all accounts obsessed with animals and nature from an early age. The parts of his legend that describe him going to great lengths to avoid hurting animals and insects, such as putting out his campfire when he realized mosquitoes and moths are being attracted to it and dying, appear to at least have a chance of being true, or sort of true, maybe true-ish. As far as I know, he was a vegetarian for much of his life. He seemed to seek God in everywhere and everything. He read heavily and somewhere or another ran into the teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg, who was a Swedish kind of proto-transcendentalist mystic theologian Christian, and he converted to the New Church that had been founded on his teachings. The New Church concerned itself with spiritual regeneration, finding your inner self, good works and charity, and occultism and astral projection. They were hippies. I have no idea if psychedelics were involved, but from the descriptions of Johnny Appleseed Chapman, it wouldn't surprise me. Folks who encountered him out on the frontier said he was always barefoot and would impress children by putting hot coals to his leathery feet to show off how tough they were. If you offered him a place to stay in your home for the night, he'd rather sleep outside, or maybe in your barn if the weather was foul, and you'd hear him all night preaching to himself excitedly. He wore a burlap sack like a toga and a tin pot for a hat, and so on and so on. As to the hat and the sack, that bit might be bunk. I've read the tin pot hat was sort of a typo for tin cloth hat, which is a type of stiff, durable cloth, and that the burlap sack was likewise just mythology. And so off Johnny went, spreading apple seeds and the good news across the frontier, barefoot, living on handouts and charity, befriending fish, bird, and bear, and singing a song. Not exactly. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris, which ended the Revolutionary War, ceded the Northwest Territory to the newly formed United States. The territory included what would later become Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and a bit of Minnesota. In 1786, the Ohio Company of Associates was formed and purchased 1.5 million acres of the Northwest Territory from the United States for the purpose of developing settlements. The Ohio Company accomplished this by making land grants to settlers. But those land grants came with some stipulations. The ordinances of the company require that anybody who had been granted land immediately start planting fruit trees. Here comes Johnny! Old Johnny Appleseed didn't caper barefoot around the forest scattering seeds all over. He studied maps, and he did his best to figure out where settlers were going to be headed next. And then he went there first. He'd find spots to set up apple nurseries, clearing some acres, planting seeds in tidy little rows, and then fencing it in. Then he'd move along about 20 miles or so and set up another one, and keep doing this, establishing strings of nurseries all over. When settlers started showing up to make land claims, he'd be waiting to sell them a set of ready-made apple tree saplings, 6 cents a piece, please. He worked a circuit. All spring long, he'd establish new nurseries. Then in the summer, he'd head back to his nurseries and hire some local someone or other to maintain and administer it for him. And then in the fall, he would return to orchards that he had started a few years back on the circuit. He would collect seeds and the profits from the sapling sales. He'd find some spot to hunker down for the winter and start the circuit again next spring. This is where the idea of him wandering around the woods sort of aimlessly came from. He never had a permanent address. He was really actually always constantly on the move. Now about them apples. See, apples are kind of weird plants because apples mutate wildly from seed to plant. Even if you take a seed from the tastiest apple you've ever had and plant it, there's a 99.9% chance that the tree that grows will produce fruit that is nothing like the apple you ate. It'll be a wrinkled, stunted, mealy, super bitter, ultra tannic, inedible piece of garbage is what you would get. Actually, Henry David Thoreau, if you can believe it, wrote about this saying, "Apples grown from seed are exceptionally crude, sour enough to set a squirrel's teeth on edge and make a jay scream." No, if you want to make good eating apples, you need to get very lucky and have a tree grown from seed mutate in a way that just produces a magically delicious apple. And then you need to clone that tree by grafting. Grafting would be planting another apple tree, letting it establish roots, then cutting the top of that sapling off just the right way with like a special notch, and clipping a branch from your good tree just the right way with a notch that matches, and then tying them together. The branch and the roots will merge and become one new tree, and that tree will produce apples exactly like your lucky mutant. But old Johnny can't do that because his mystical religion has a rule against it. He can't cut living things, and trees are alive. So he can't cut them. And frankly, I call bullshit on that because he's out there clearing trees to create nurseries. He's clearing areas. He's walking around in the woods, crushing twigs and grass and things. He's starting fires. I think he probably built things. I'm sure he built something. He's cutting wood. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I'll stake my reputation on it that he did those things. He cut wood. I'll tell you what I think. I think our boy Johnny just missed grafting day at his apprenticeship, and he became too embarrassed to admit it. Okay, but if apples grown from seed are useless for eating, why would you even plant them? Cider, my friend. Cider. In those days, hard cider was by far the most popular alcoholic beverage in the US. More popular than beer or wine or rum or whiskey or brandy or any of it. By some accounts, all the way up until just before Prohibition, when an influx of German immigrants finally made beer popular in America and in the process freaked out nativists so badly that the Women's Christian Temperance Union managed to get their lifelong dream accomplished of ratifying the 18th Amendment and outlawing alcohol entirely. I wasn't sure if I was going to make a star cocktail here or a Jack Rose, but I like the Jack Rose more as a drink, and it would have been popular in the years leading up to Prohibition. And I've been meaning to make one for a minute now because I have this pre-Prohibition style Grenadine that doesn't have pomegranate in it, and I had another episode on it. You should check out the links, and I'm psyched to have an opportunity and a reason to do so for this episode. Jack Rose recipes in the books I have from the era are kind of all over the map in terms of spec, but Harry McElhone has it as being 1 part lemon juice, 1 part Grenadine, the pre-Prohibition variety if you can get it, or if you can make it. Check out Darcy O'Neill's recipe for that. Like I said in every episode where this has come up, it would have been kind of clovey and spiced, more like less sweet Coca-Cola syrup or Angostura bitters. And 2 parts Applejack. Shake that over ice. Jack Rose recipes in the books I have from the era are all over the place in terms of spec, but Harry McElhone, he calls it an Applejack cocktail, and his recipe for the Jack Rose is a monstrosity with all of the vermouths and juices, but his Applejack cocktail matches the spirit of everyone else's Jack Rose, so I think that was either a misprint or the name changed or something to that effect. Cheers. Oh, I love that. Okay, it's a very simple sour. It's the 1-1-2 sour, 1 ounce of sour, 1 ounce of sweet, and 2 ounces of spirit, but Applejack is delicious. I love Applejack. I'm from New Jersey, home of Lairds. We are Applejack people. There is a sweet, spiced note up front that is balanced and tempered by the lemon that gives way into this like baked apple deliciousness and this dry, tart apple. I mean, this is a fantastic drink. I've been meaning to get around to making one of these ever since I discovered Darcy's pre-Prohibition Grenadine recipe, and I just haven't had a reason to, and I'm really psyched to finally have it. It's fantastic with the pre-Prohibition Grenadine. Honestly, if you don't have that, maybe use like an Amaro Angostura and Simple or something. Really good. I loved it. Now, Applejack starts its life as apple cider, which particularly in rural areas was drank morning, noon, and night by people of all ages. And you can turn your apple cider into Applejack by leaving it out in a barrel in the winter. The water will freeze and the alcohol won't. You just chuck away the frozen parts and keep the liquid parts, get rid of the water, keep the alcohol, and from my reading, you can get yourself up to about 33% ABV that way. There's always this story that goes around about folks drinking in ye olden days because the alcohol was safer to drink than the water, and I am telling you, that is nonsense. You can look it up, but just think about it for a minute here. People have been digging wells for thousands and thousands of years. Human beings know how to get clean water, or we wouldn't be here. They just liked the way it tasted and the way it made them feel, and they didn't care what you thought about it. There is one very practical, very important use for apple cider though, beyond having a very good time, and that's making vinegar. You need vinegar to make pickles, and pickling is pretty important stuff out on the frontier. I have occasionally seen it said that Johnny Appleseed was a teetotaler and a member of the temperance movement, which would make for fantastic irony, and I wish so much that I could tell you that it's true. But there's no evidence for it at all. In fact, if he was a prohibitionist, he probably would have quit the apple tree thing altogether, because as early as 1820, the temperance movement was beginning to demonize apples because they led to apple cider and Applejack, and that led to drunkenness. In the fever-pitched moral panic that led up to Prohibition, apple orchards were sometimes burned, either by the farmers themselves who were reforming their wicked ways, or by do-gooder reformists going from place to place burning up apple orchards. Smart. And then comes Prohibition. So what are these farmers going to do with all these apples that they can no longer turn into cider? Well, as you know, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and so I guess it's time to start eating them. And that's why you know that, because it was a slogan made up to convince people to buy apples for eating instead of brewing. This is also around the time that Appleseed gets sort of American deified and turned into one of our saints. His image gets rehabilitated into a jolly fool wandering the wilderness, scattering seeds, so that settlers will have apples to eat when they arrive, which is about where your third grade teacher comes in. So here's to Johnny Appleseed, the barefoot woods witch, mystic Christian apple wizard, shrewd land speculator, businessman, westward expansion. To Johnny Appleseed! I was trying to do a Bill Brasky thing there. Bill Brasky, you son of a bitch!